They say time heals everything, but what if time only reminds you of what you've lost? Ethan was gone, or so I thought. But when he came back, he wasn't the same boy I once loved, and the world wasn't ready for what we were about to do next. The silence between storms. Amelia's perspective. The rain had stopped 3 days ago, but inside me it hadn't. I still woke up to the faint smell of coffee that no longer came from Ethan's kitchen. I still checked my phone for messages that didn't exist, and sometimes I caught myself reaching for the side of the bed where he used to sleep, only to find the same emptiness staring back. It's strange how silence becomes a sound when you miss someone enough. It hums through your veins. It whispers between your breaths. It fills every room you once called safe. I thought distance would heal me. It didn't. It only made the ache louder. After everything that happened, the gossip, the judgment, the eyes that followed me down the grocery aisle, I promised myself I would move on. I deleted the photos. I changed my number. I moved across town to a smaller house with fewer memories. But the heart doesn't follow orders. Sometimes I'd see someone in the distance, a tall boy in a hoodie, and my heart would race before my mind reminded me it wasn't him. Every little thing became a ghost of us. It had been 3 months since I last saw Ethan. 3 months of pretending that our story had ended quietly, that I could just erase him like an unwanted chapter. But love doesn't fade like ink. It stains you. I went back to teaching, though the whispers never fully died. Some parents pulled their kids out of my class. Others just stared. My colleagues avoided eye contact. The principal smiled politely, but his tone had changed. Distant, formal. I didn't blame them. I blamed myself. Then one Thursday morning a letter arrived. No name on the envelope, just my address, in handwriting I could never forget. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside, a single line. I never stopped thinking about you. No signature. But I didn't need one. I sat on the floor, the letter trembling between my fingers, and felt the months of denial collapse all at once. Because I had spent so long trying to forget him, and now with one sentence he was back inside my chest. That night I didn't sleep. The city outside felt too alive, too close. Every car that passed made my heart jump. Every raindrop on the window sounded like his voice. By morning, I had made a decision, one I wasn't proud of, one I couldn't explain. I drove. I didn't even know where I was going until I saw the familiar road, the one that led to his part of town. My hands moved on their own, my heart steering me faster than reason could stop me. When I reached his street, I parked 2 houses away. His car wasn't there. The blinds were drawn, but a light was on inside. I waited. For what, I didn't know. Maybe for him to walk out. Maybe for me to find closure. Maybe for a sign that what we had was real. Instead, I saw a girl. She couldn't have been more than 20. Pretty. Brown hair tied in a careless bun. She opened his door with a key. A key. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The world tilted. My chest felt hollow. I wanted to believe it was nothing. A friend, a classmate, anyone but what my mind whispered. But the way she looked around before entering, the way she smiled softly when the door closed behind her. It was the same way I used to smile. I sat in my car for hours after that. The rain started again. The city blurred. And all I could think was, maybe love was never meant to be ours. But then my phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown number. If you're out there, don't leave. My heart stopped. It was him, and just like that, the storm returned. The ghost of what we were, Amelia's perspective, I told myself I wouldn't reply. I even typed, "Please don't contact me again," twice, and deleted it both times. It was 2:37 a.m., and the city was quiet except for the rain. The message glowed on my screen like a memory I'd tried to bury. If you're out there, don't leave! My fingers hovered over the keyboard. My heart had already answered. Instead of typing, I started the car and drove again. The streets were slick with rain. Every red light felt like a test, a moment to turn back. But I didn't. Something stronger than reason was pulling me forward. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was weakness. Maybe both. By the time I reached his house, the lights were off. The girl was gone, and yet, his front porch light flickered once, as if someone knew I'd come back. I sat there for a minute, trying to gather courage. My pulse was too loud. My palms were wet. The air outside smelled like wet concrete and nostalgia. Then the door opened. He stood there, older than I remembered. His hair was a little longer, his eyes heavier, but they were still Ethan's eyes. The same eyes that once made me forget who I was supposed to be. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Then softly he said, "You came." I almost said I didn't mean to, that it was a mistake. But the truth stuck to my tongue. I never really left. He smiled. Not the playful, boyish grin I remembered, but something quieter, sadder. He stepped aside, and I entered. The air inside smelled like him, cedarwood and rain. The house was clean, but it didn't feel lived in. A single mug sat on the counter. A blanket was thrown over the couch. A photo of his parents hung slightly crooked on the wall, and there on the table, the same letter he'd sent me. "Why now?" I asked. "Because I couldn't pretend anymore," he said. "Because every day without you felt like a lie." His words should have made me happy. Instead, they hurt, because I knew what they meant. We stood there, two people trapped in the same past, staring at a future we couldn't touch. "You have someone," I whispered. "The girl," he looked down. "She's not what you think." "Then what is she?" "A distraction." And it didn't work. Something inside me broke again. Not from jealousy, from the realization that we were both still stuck in the same place, running in circles around something we could never fix. I wanted to say I forgave him. I wanted to say we could start over. But before I could speak, he reached out, just barely touching my hand, and suddenly, everything that had been buried came flooding back. The nights, the laughter, the fear, the promise we never kept. "You shouldn't have called me," I said. "You shouldn't have answered," he replied. For a moment, neither of us breathed. Lightning flashed outside. The room glowed red for a second, and in that flash, I saw everything we had lost. Then quietly, he said, "They're watching me." I frowned. "Who?" "People from the school." "From your district. They've been asking questions about us." My heart stopped. "Ethan." He looked terrified, not of me, but of what might come next. "Someone found the old messages," he said. "I think they're going to file something." The air left my lungs. For months, I'd thought the worst had already happened. The judgment, the whispers, the loneliness. But this was different. This was real. "You need to stay away from me," I said, my voice breaking. He shook his head. "I can't." "You have to, Ethan. This can destroy everything." It already did. There was nothing left to say after that. When I walked out, the rain had turned to mist. The city lights blurred through my tears. Behind me, I could still feel his eyes, like gravity, refusing to let me go. I didn't look back. I couldn't, but I knew this wasn't over. Because ghosts don't disappear when you ignore them, they follow you home, and that night mine did. When I reached my house, the phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. "Mrs. Collins?" a voice said. "This is Officer Grant. We need to talk about a student named Ethan Moore." The rain outside grew louder, and my world went silent. The investigation, Amelia's perspective. When the call ended, I couldn't move. The phone was still pressed against my ear, the rain still whispered against the glass, but it felt like the world had stopped breathing. "Officer Grant," I repeated to myself. Ethan Moore, his name on a police officer's lips. It didn't sound like love anymore. It sounded like evidence. The walls around me seemed to close in. Every framed picture, every book, every quiet corner suddenly became suspicious, like they were all holding secrets I'd forgotten to hide. I sat down, forcing myself to breathe. "It's okay," I whispered. "You haven't done anything wrong," but that was a lie. Because love like ours in this world would always be wrong. A knock came at the door an hour later. 2 officers. Polite smiles, neutral eyes. One of them, Officer Grant, had a voice that was calm but cold. "We just need to ask you a few questions, Mrs. Collins, about your former student, Ethan Moore." Former. That word hurt more than I expected. They sat across from me in the living room, notebooks open. I noticed how their eyes scanned the place, searching for clues, patterns, guilt. "When was the last time you had contact with him?" I swallowed. "Months ago." "Are you sure about that?" I hesitated, just long enough for him to notice. Grant leaned forward. "Mrs. Collins, someone reported seeing you near his residence last night. Can you explain that?" My mind went blank. Every excuse felt like a lie. Every truth felt like a confession. "I was driving. I didn't realize where I was going. I didn't stop." He nodded, writing something down. "Did you communicate with him? By phone, message, letter?" I froze. The letter. It was still on my kitchen table. "No," I said quietly. He watched me for a second longer than he needed to. Then he smiled, politely, almost kindly. "If anything comes to mind later, please contact us. We're just trying to make sure nothing inappropriate happened between you and Mr. Moore during his time as your student." Inappropriate. That word lingered like poison in the air. When they left, I locked the door and sank to the floor. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was pressure. I went to the kitchen and grabbed the letter. My fingers trembled as I held it over the sink. I could burn it, tear it, make it disappear, but I didn't, because it was the last thing I had left of him. Instead, I folded it back and hid it inside a book on my shelf, one he used to love, The Great Gatsby. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside made me jump. Every headlight that passed my window felt like a watchful eye. And then, around midnight, a message appeared on my phone. They came to see me, too. It was Ethan. "What did you tell them?" I replied instantly. "Nothing, I swear." "But they know something, Amelia." "Someone's talking." My heart raced. "Who?" "I don't know. Maybe the girl, the one with the key." Suddenly, everything made sense. The way she looked around that night, the nervous smile. Maybe she wasn't just a visitor. Maybe she knew more than I did. "Ethan, you have to stay quiet. Don't call me. Don't text me. Please." He didn't reply. But the damage was already done. The next morning, my principal called me into his office. His tone was professional, his expression unreadable. "Amelia, I'm afraid we've received a complaint. Until this is resolved, you'll need to take a leave of absence." My stomach dropped. "A complaint from who?" "It's confidential." Of course it was. By the time I reached home, my neighbors were already whispering. I could feel it. The way they stopped talking when I passed. The way curtains moved just slightly when I parked my car. In less than 24 hours, everything I'd rebuilt had started to fall apart again. I tried to call Ethan once, twice, 3 times. No answer. By the 4th time, his phone was disconnected. I sat on the couch, staring at the rain outside, trying to convince myself that this was just another passing storm. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't weather. This was consequence. And somewhere out there, someone was making sure we paid the price. When night fell, I turned off the lights and sat by the window. My reflection stared back, tired, older, and afraid, and then I saw it. Across the street. A car parked too long, headlights off. Inside, a figure, watching. Whispers of doubt. The winter wind rattled the window panes of Amelia's apartment, carrying with it a chill that matched the unease in her heart. The heater hummed softly, but no warmth seemed to reach her tonight. Ethan had left a few hours ago, his laughter still echoing faintly in her mind, yet the silence that followed felt deafening. Lately, something had changed. Something small, invisible, but heavy. A hesitation in his touch, a delay in his replies, a certain distraction when his phone buzzed. Amelia noticed it all, though she pretended not to. She had lived long enough to recognize when someone's heart was starting to drift. And yet, she couldn't bring herself to face it. She stood by the window, watching the faint city lights blur through her tears. Was I selfish to think this could last forever? She thought. The age gap, the secrecy, the judgmental eyes. She had ignored them all because when he smiled, she felt young again. She felt alive. That night, she opened her journal, the same one where she had once written her dreams. But the words that spilled out now were different. They were full of questions. Is love enough when the world refuses to believe in it? Can a heart rebuild itself after being loved in silence? Meanwhile, Ethan sat in his car, parked on a dimly lit street. His fingers tapped nervously on the steering wheel as he scrolled through his phone. His best friend had sent him a text. "Bro, this thing with her, you need to be careful. It's not normal. People are talking." Ethan sighed, guilt and confusion twisting inside him. He loved Amelia. He knew he did, but lately the whispers had grown louder. Friends mocking, co-workers hinting, strangers staring. It was easier to laugh it off before, but now it felt suffocating. He looked up at Amelia's building one last time before driving away. The taillights disappeared into the night, leaving her standing alone by the window, unaware that this was the first night he didn't text goodnight. Inside, Amelia's pen slipped from her trembling hand. Something in her chest ached, a quiet knowing, like the sound of something beautiful beginning to break. Shadows between us days turned into weeks. Ethan's visits became rarer, his excuses more frequent. Work, studies, family, and the list grew endless. Amelia smiled through it all, pretending she understood. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that love could survive distance, silence, and doubt. But every time she looked in the mirror, she saw what she feared he saw, a woman growing older. The faint lines near her eyes, the graying strands in her hair. Once he had kissed those lines and called them beautiful. Now she wondered if he even noticed them anymore. One evening, Amelia decided to visit him unannounced. Her heart raced as she climbed the stairs to his apartment, carrying his favorite pie, apple cinnamon, just like he loved. But when she reached the door, she froze. She heard laughter inside. A young woman's voice, light, carefree, familiar in a way that cut deep. Amelia's hand trembled as she reached for the doorknob, then stopped. She turned around and walked away without knocking. The pie box slipped from her grasp, hitting the hallway floor with a dull thud. By the time she got home, the snow had started to fall. She stood outside her door for a long time, shivering. Not from the cold, but from the realization that the world she had built around him was slowly collapsing. That night, she wrote one last entry in her journal. Maybe love isn't about holding on. Maybe it's about knowing when to let someone go, even if it tears you apart. The last goodbye. The phone call came 2 weeks later. Ethan's voice on the other end was quiet, almost trembling. "Amelia, we need to talk." She knew it before he even said it. The words came out soft, apologetic, rehearsed. He told her he cared for her, but things had changed. That he needed to think about his future, his reputation, his family. Amelia listened without interrupting, her heart cracking silently with every syllable. When he was done, she simply said, "I understand." He offered to come over, but she refused. "No, Ethan. This is something I have to do alone." After hanging up, she sat by the window one last time, watching the snow melt under the morning sun. The city moved on. Cars passed, people laughed, life continued. But for her, time stood still. She closed her eyes and whispered his name one final time. A tear slipped down her cheek, landing softly on her journal. The last page remained unfinished, as if her story had paused, waiting for something. Maybe hope, maybe closure. Outside, the snow turned red under the dawn light, as if the world itself mourned a love too fragile to survive. And just before the scene faded, a soft whisper echoed through the silence. "This isn't the end." "Not yet."